Hey, thanks for watching this replay broadcast. You can still give me hearts by tapping on the screen. Hey guys, Michael Hyatt here. Welcome to the Virtual Mentor Show. My goal is to give you the clarity, the confidence, and the tools you need to win at work and to succeed at life. And today I'm really excited about the topic. We're going to be talking about the top 10 characteristics of lousy leaders. Okay? So if you guys want to share this, I'd be really grateful. All you got to do is swipe to the left and you can share it to your followers, to Facebook, to Twitter, or to anybody else. And give me the hearts if you agree with something I've said or if it resonates with you. I'd love to hear from that too. So maybe a little bit of a controversial topic today. So tell me where you guys are from. Where are you calling in from today? And by the way, I do have a new Periscope profile page, periscope.tv/Michael Hyatt. Hey, Richard from St. Louis, Dallas, Ohio, Rome, Italy, Charlotte, Florida, Minnesota, Dale from Edmonton. Hey, Dale. Hot Atlanta. Well, I'm in cool Nashville today. It's amazingly cool. California, Charlotte, Henrietta from Norway, Edinburgh, Scotland, New York, Raleigh, South Dakota. Awesome. Hashtag all over the place. It's great to see you guys. In case you don't know me, my name is Michael Hyatt. I'm the New York Times bestselling author of Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World. I blog at michaelhyatt.com where I get about 1 million page views a month. And my podcast can be found on iTunes. It's called This Is Your Life. It's usually in the top 5 or so in the iTunes self-help category. And really interesting episode this particular week. I'll let you just discover it on your own. But I talk about profanity and its impact on your business or the potential impact on your business. I've been happily married to my wife, Gail, for 37 years. We've got 5 grown daughters. We have 4 sons-in-law and 8 grandchildren. Again, this is the Virtual Mentor Show. If you feel like you're an overwhelmed high achiever, this is the show for you. If you're ready to stop drifting and ready to start designing your life, this is the show for you. And today we're going to be talking about the top 10 characteristics of lousy leaders. Just for my own information, and this is completely off topic, did you guys install the new Apple iOS 9 update if you're using an iPhone or an iPad? How many of you did that yesterday? I couldn't wait for it, and so I upgraded right away, but it took me about an hour to get the servers to respond. I guess they were so busy. Yep, not yet. Nope. It seems pretty stable. I was involved in the beta, so I totally understand what you're saying about waiting until the glitches passed. But somebody said, I heard it's not good. I haven't heard any of that. I actually like it. It seems faster. I think the battery life is a little bit longer, and it definitely seems easier to use. Yep. Sarah's got a hashtag, the Virtual Mentor Show. Awesome. You can use that one if you want. Super. Other question for you. Before we get into the 10 characteristics, top 10 characteristics, there's probably more, of lousy leaders, how many of you watched the Republican debates last night? I watched it with Gail, the second one. I didn't watch the early one with just the 4 guys, but I watched the second one. And I watched that with my wife, Gail, and I watched it with my daughter, Marissa. How many of you guys watched it? You know, I watched about 2 hours of it, and then I got kind of worn out with it. It seemed like it just went on and on. Can you believe that it was 3 hours long? Yeah, somebody says they were at church at a prayer meeting. Probably better use for your time. Let me grab a drink of water here. Yeah, my mom saw it and said everybody was battling. Yeah, too many people on the stage. Went on too long. Yeah, the crazy thing about this, if we're doing this with more than a year to go, oh my gosh, we're going to be so worn out by the time this election comes about. My producer, Dean, whom I introduced to you yesterday, is from Toronto. So the Canadians, my Canadian friends, and I have a lot of them, my Canadian friends kind of watch American politics with amusement, and those of you in Europe probably do too. But he said, in Canada, the election, I think he said, is maybe 8 or 12 weeks long. So, there's a limit on how much they can spend, and then there's a limit on how long they campaign, which sounds like a great idea to me. But I suppose it makes for great TV. But I realized last night, this really isn't about politics. It's more like a sporting event. That's really what it feels like to me. So, I don't know. If you did watch it, who do you think won? Who do you think won the debates? I have my own opinion, and I might even share it with you today. I may wax political today. By the way, somebody said, why is the screen sideways? Have you updated to the new Periscope yet, which uses landscape? So if you haven't updated to the new Periscope, yeah, Carly and Marco, that's kind of who I think won. If you haven't updated to the new Periscope yet, would you please do that? Because it has landscape as one of its major new features. But if you're watching this on your side, I would watch it portrait so that I'm in landscape at the top of the screen, but the comments are rolling below that and not rolling over my face. Alex said Carly had the best zinger of the night. Mitchie said Carly and Rubio. Tom said Ben Carson or Carly Fiorina. Nancy Marcus said, I love politics. Carson is a great guy, but has all the stage presence of a loaf of bread. Why don't you tell us what you really think, Clay? Madeline said, I don't think there was a clear winner. Fiorina was the most articulate, though. Yeah, I thought she was amazing. Okay, do you guys want to hear who I thought won? Okay, I don't want to lose any friends over this, okay? This is politics. It's constantly changing. I promise you. I have lots of friends that disagree with me. I love them. And I would love that if, at least in the U.S., we could have a grown-up conversation about politics without a lot of polarization and mudslinging and hatred and ad hominem arguments and all the rest. But I'll tell you who I think won. Okay. I think Carly and Rubio won. Or maybe I should say, I thought they were the most articulate, had the most informed foreign policy especially. And my own view is that the president's number one job is to protect us from invaders, from hostile enemies, from people that would seek to destroy our company. I think that's the first job of the commander-in-chief. He's called the commander-in-chief for a reason, or she is called the commander-in-chief for a reason, if we're lucky enough to get a woman for president in the near future. So I thought that Carly and Rubio are the most informed on that topic. And I just appreciated the fact that they both seem to really, really do their homework. And my guess is that Carly's going to see a bump in the polls. What about Trump? What do you guys think of him? Yeah, Mary said another Thatcher? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think she's got the chops. It's so corrupt. Wonder if Donald is the only one to bulldoze it. Somebody said he's a bully. Trump is clueless. A blowhard, a joke. Trump, please, Clark said. Trump went safe. Same old same. Yeah. You know, when I think about leadership, I think that's kind of the great crisis in our country today, is that we really have a crisis of leadership. I think that every problem we face as a nation, or we face in the world, or if you're not from the U.S., that your country faces as a nation, every crisis that you face in your company, your organization, even your home, ultimately is a failure of leadership. And it obviously has got to start with us. You know, somebody once said, we get the people we deserve in public office. And I think there is a sense that that's true. And when you see kind of where the political wind is blowing right now, it's a little bit scary, not so much because some of the candidates are so maddeningly, I don't know, corrupt or just bad leaders. But what really troubles me about that is that so many Americans are willing to vote for them. So I don't really want to focus this on personalities, although I'm going to use some of the political candidates as illustrations for what I'm going to share with you. And again, we're talking about the top 10 characteristics of lousy leaders. And I'm going to use some examples from the political scene. You may totally disagree with me. And that's fine. You know, have at it. All I would ask is that you be respectful. You know, not only of me, but the other people that are on today, that you'd be respectful. Let's be willing to have a grown-up conversation where we listen and not just talk. Okay? Yeah, so somebody said, but Trump says what plenty are thinking. Yeah, I think that's part of his appeal, is that he's saying out loud what a lot of people are thinking. And I've got some major problems with Donald Trump, I don't mind telling you, but I do think he's tapped into a kind of frustration that Americans have with what's going on in Washington and what nobody's saying. So that's why I think he's succeeding. But here are my top 10 characteristics, and I want to just tell you a little bit about how I got into this. Let me just scroll up here on my iPad mini to my notes. This comes from a blog post that I did a while back, earlier this year, and you can find it at vMentor, virtual mentor, vmentor.tv/lousy. So if you guys could put this in the comments so other people could click on it and get there, that'd be great. vmentor.tv/lousy. And I'm going to get to your questions in a minute. So I love your comments. Fantastic. But I'm going to get to those in a minute, and I'm going to go up for about 15 minutes, and then I'll answer questions or take comments, read your comments, and comment on them as I can. So this all came about when I used to work for a guy that just didn't have any self-confidence. And he was pretty high up in our company. He was one of the executive vice presidents, and I was a direct report. So every time I would bring him something in order to make a decision, because something that required an approval that was above my approval level, I would bring in the appropriate paperwork, I would make the presentation for him, and then I would ask him to approve it. And almost, probably 99 times out of 100, he didn't think it was enough information. He would send me back to the drawing board. So I'd get him what he requested, I would bring it back to him, he would hem and haw, and wouldn't make a decision, send me back on another wild goose chase to get some more information, and then I'd bring it back to him. Finally, he would reluctantly approve it. But by that time, the opportunity had passed. We missed it. And then he would blame me for losing the opportunity. Well, that little circle got really frustrating. That kind of doom loop of me going through this exercise of getting more information and more information and more information. But the bottom line was he just didn't have the confidence to make the decisions that he was called upon to make. He was playing way over his head. Thankfully, the CEO had pity on me and had me start reporting to him because he could see that I was clearly frustrated and I wasn't going to stay in the company if something didn't change. So that kind of grew out of me observing that one lousy leadership characteristic, which I'll talk about in a minute, but I've added some more to it. So let me just give you my top 10 list here. So first of all, the first characteristic of lousy leaders is that they don't have enough confidence to lead at their level. Now, I've said that part of my value proposition to you is that I want to give you the clarity and the confidence and the tools to win at work and to succeed at life. So confidence is critically important. I think it's very difficult to succeed if we're not confident. Now, I don't mean arrogant, okay? There's a fundamental difference between confidence and arrogance. You know, arrogance is something that calls all this attention to yourself. It's kind of bragging for bragging's sake. And, you know, honestly, that's my view of Donald Trump. Is he confident? I think some people misinterpret that as confidence. But honestly, I think it's arrogance. And I'll tell you the difference. Because in Donald's world, and again, you may disagree with me, but in Donald's world, everybody else has to be wrong. You know, he's the only guy that's right. He can, and here's a telltale sign of somebody who is arrogant, not just confident. They can never apologize. They can never acknowledge their own wrongs. They can never see when they've screwed up, and it's everybody else's fault. I mean, last night in the debates, it was incredible to me. Jeb Bush asked him to apologize to his wife, whom he had insulted, and Donald refused to do it. And I saw a Jimmy Fallon interview with Donald Trump, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that on YouTube, yeah, Authentic Truth said narcissism. Yeah, I mean, I hate to use the N-word, but yes, that's a place where it's probably appropriate, is that I think he is a little narcissistic. But the Jimmy Fallon interview of Donald Trump was hilarious. But one of the things that Jimmy asked him is, he said, do you ever apologize? Have you ever apologized? And he was like, I don't think I have, but you know, I could in the future. If anybody could ever prove me wrong, I would. Well, that's not confidence. That's arrogance. I think confidence is somebody like Marco Rubio last night, who was completely in command of the facts, who was able to articulate clearly a position. Carly Fiorina did the same thing. A number of the candidates did this. They had a quiet confidence without being arrogant. And I think that some of the stuff that Donald Trump does that makes me just want to, I don't know, go crazy, is that when he insults people for their looks. And he's done this repeatedly. I feel like I'm in junior high school. And I was grateful last night that Rand Paul called him out on it, though it didn't seem to make any difference. So, at any rate, the top characteristic, in my view, of a lousy leader is that they don't have the confidence to lead. I said the top. These are the top 10. That's not actually the top one. These are in no particular order. Number 2, they're arrogant, assuming that they always know what's best. And again, that's what I think is an example of Trump. You know, it's not just that he doesn't have confidence. He probably does have confidence, but it's arrogant. So that's number 2. They're arrogant, assuming they always know what's best. And I think anytime I get around a leader who says it's my way or the highway, and forget the political scene for just a minute, but people maybe you've worked for, maybe you've been that guy or that gal, but to always assume that you're right is very, very dangerous. At best, you have a perspective. You know, your perspective may be informed by your experience. It may be formed by your study or your research. Great. But it's not the only one, okay? So we've got to be really careful about being arrogant. So on the one hand, we want to be confident, and our confidence is informed by our experience, by accumulating some wins over a period of time, but we can't let that become arrogance, or it becomes dangerous for us and for the people that we lead. Number 3, third characteristic of lousy leaders is that they're disorganized. I used to work for this guy. This is another guy I worked for. And I've worked for a lot of knuckleheads. You probably have too. You know, I've worked for some great leaders, but I've worked for some knuckleheads too. This guy was so disorganized that I would go to his office, and about half the time he was either late, like 10, 15, 20 minutes late to the meeting that he had called, or the other times he wouldn't show up. And he wouldn't tell me till we were on 2 campuses at this point in my company, and I would drive to the campus where he was, and then he'd cancel it after I'd made the trek. He was just disorganized. His calendar was disorganized. His office was a mess, papers falling everywhere, and he just had no internal order, and it was obvious because of the external disorder in his life. What about you? Are you organized? I'm not talking about being a neatnik. I'm just talking about, do you have a general sense of order about your life? It builds confidence in your people when you do. Wendy said lack of respect for other people's time. Oh, I hate that. Leaders who are chronically late to meetings, what does that say? If you're chronically late to meetings, what does that say about the people you're trying to lead? Essentially, it's disrespectful, right? It basically says, my time is more important than your time. I don't value your time. Terrible message to give. Or it says, you're disorganized and incompetent. And somebody says, yeah, but too much to do. Well, why do you have too much to do? I'm sorry, I am not going to let you play the blame game. I don't care if you're working for somebody and you think you're overworked. You've got to figure that out. This is a mark of leadership. For you to be able to manage your own calendar, to be able to say to your own boss, look, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, something's got to break, I've got to help, you've got to help me identify my priorities because I can't do all this stuff. I think that's a leadership trait, and you have to develop it, and sometimes the only way to develop it is in an environment where you're given too much to do. Okay? There, I said it. Number 4, fourth characteristic of lousy leaders is that their words and actions erode trust even with their supporters. In other words, they're careless with their words. They undermine trust. You know, maybe it's because they're not honest, or maybe it's just because they lack integrity. Now, let me explain to you the difference. And I got this from Dr. Stephen Covey. Integrity is when we make our actions line up with our words. So in other words, if I make a promise, if I give my word to something, if I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, that's a lack of integrity because there's not an alignment between what I said and what I did. Okay? A lie, on the other hand, is when our words don't line up with our actions. In other words, we distort the truth based on our actions. So they don't line up. We tell an untruth about something we did or something we didn't do, and our words don't line up with our actions. So honesty and integrity are important. And if we don't practice both of those, if we don't fulfill our promises, even when it's difficult, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's expensive, we undermine trust. Okay? And when you undermine trust, you lose the power of your leadership. Honesty, same thing. People catch you in little lies, distorting the facts, spinning the truth. It hurts your leadership. So that's my fourth characteristic of lousy leaders, is that their words and actions erode trust, even with their supporters. And I think, frankly, and again, I want you to think about this from a leadership perspective, not a political perspective. This is why Hillary is sinking in the polls right now, is because people sense, even though she, keeps trying to spin it, if she would just own this email scandal, and I'm not talking about the admission that she made last week where she said, yeah, it was a mistake. I mean, kind of like, I'm ticked off that I got caught. No. But if from her gut she said, what I did was wrong. I don't have any excuse. It was wrong. If she would do that, she would begin to rebuild trust. But she doesn't do that. And unfortunately, she's had a lifetime, in my opinion, of doing this kind of thing. And it's cost her dearly, and I think it's about to cost her the Democratic nomination. Number 5, characteristic of lousy leaders, is overpromise and underdeliver. Now, guys, this is not just rampant in Washington. And I could throw political figures from both sides of the aisle, both parties, under the bus on this one. I think we have politicians that are filling Washington who got elected on promises that they made and have not been able to deliver on. And you might say, well, the climate was hostile. Look, that's just leadership, okay? So, the fact, let me just pick on President Obama for a minute. Again, I'm not picking on him because I dislike him. I like him very much. But the truth is, he made some campaign promises, some huge ones, like he was going to have the most transparent administration in history. It has been anything but transparent. It's been the most opaque administration ever. So he's not been transparent. He's not created alignment between the parties. He's not reached out to the other party and tried to sell his vision, like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill were able to do, or Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. Again, two opposing forces, but they had the ability, the talent, in some cases the character, to be able to reach across the aisle and to forge that kind of alignment. And they may have overpromised, and I suppose every politician is guilty of this to some extent, but they delivered on a lot of what they promised. Well, forget the politics for a second. Let's just talk about us. Are we overpromising to our bosses, to our customers, to our vendors, to the people we're trying to lead? Are we overpromising and under-delivering? I think it's really critically important. It goes back again to that issue of integrity. Much better to underpromise and over-deliver. And that's when people, when our leadership rises in their view. So that's the 5th one. 6, they don't articulate a clear vision. This is like the first and foremost job of a leader, is to have a vision, a clear vision of where you're taking your organization, or where you're taking your country, or where you're taking your family. That's why clarity is the first thing in my value proposition. When I say to you, I help overwhelmed high achievers find the clarity, the confidence, and the tools they need to win at work and succeed at life. Clarity is first. Clarity about the future, clarity about vision. Where are you going with your life? Where are you going with the organization that you're leading? People perish, the Bible says, by lack of vision, because of lack of vision. It's important to have a vision, not only as a nation, but for you as a leader in your family, for your own life. Let's just start with that, for your own life. What's the vision of where you want to be in 25 years? Where do you want to take your family? What's your vision for your family, for your relationship with your spouse and your kids? What's a relationship you want to have with your organization? Where are you taking it? What's your vision? Or politically? And I think that what we have in this crisis, in this country right now, even a bigger crisis than leadership, is a crisis of vision. Now, Trump is capitalizing on this because his slogan is to make America great again. So I think that he's generated enormous support from people who feel like we've lost something in the recent past. Where it fails, though, is that when he gets pressed for details, essentially he says, just trust me. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Just trust me. The problem is, that's not an answer. You get a little bit of play initially, a little bit of resonance when you say this, slogan. But leadership and vision is more than a slogan. The devil's in the details, as they say. And if Trump's going to be a viable candidate, and personally I don't think he is currently, but if he's going to be a viable candidate, he's going to have to get some detail around his proposals, around his ideas. That's the reason why I like Carly. That's the reason I like Rubio. And those aren't the only candidates. A lot of candidates have been very thoughtful about what they're going to do, what the future is going to be. I think, by the way, this is one of the reasons Bernie Sanders is succeeding on the Democratic side, is because he has a clear vision, a clearer vision than Hillary does for our future. Okay, number 7. I better keep going and pick up the pace here. We're going to be here all day. Number 7, they don't enroll others in their initiatives. This is hugely important. I mean, once you get a vision, awesome. But guess what? You got to enroll other people in the vision. You got to be able to bring other people with you. That's the mark of a great leader. If you can't do that, I don't care if you got vision, it's not going to do anybody any good if you can't enroll people in the vision. And I've met so many leaders that have a vision and then get frustrated. And they start saying things to me like, well, the people that work for me are just stupid. They don't get it. Well, why don't they get it? Maybe if you sold it better, maybe if you could articulate a more compelling vision, they would get it. Your job is to communicate it. Your job is to communicate a compelling vision and to get people on board. This is the thing I loved about Ronald Reagan. Bill Clinton was very good at this as well. George Bush, in his first term, was actually pretty good at this. Obama was fantastic at this as a campaigner. The problem was when it came time to be in office. And I think that that's one of the great disappointments that I've had with President Obama, is that while he has a vision, frankly, I'm not sure what it is in foreign policy right now, but while he has a vision, he doesn't seem to be interested in aligning anybody or enrolling anybody around that vision. Instead, he just uses force. He just uses executive orders. He muscles his positions through. Obamacare didn't have a single Republican supporter, right? This Iran deal hasn't had a single Republican supporter. But he could have sold those deals if he actually got engaged in the process of making the rounds, building relationships, hearing people out, letting them express their concerns. That's what great leaders do. Okay, number 8. Lousy leaders. These are 10 characteristics of lousy leaders. Number 8, they're not transparent. This is so important. If you're going to build trust, you've got to have a level of transparency. You've got to be open, you've got to be vulnerable, and you have to be transparent. If people sense you're hiding something, they don't trust. This is true, by the way, as a parent. It's true as a business leader. It's true as a ministry leader. And it's definitely true in politics. And I applaud the candidates that have put their tax returns out there, who have made their business dealings transparent, who have, revealed it all, nothing to hide. That's what it takes. That's why it's so important. And that's why I get frustrated with Hillary Clinton, despite her claim to the contrary, that she's dumped all these emails, made these all available to the State Department. Not really. Not till she was really pressured into it. She's selected which ones. It's like self-policing. She's selected the ones. But I think it's a real problem for her. If I were her campaign advisor, I would say one of the best things you could do is get really transparent, really own where you've screwed up, and this is the beginning of how you could rebuild trust. So again, I want this to be not a lesson in politics, but a lesson in leadership. Number 9, Lousy leaders are blind to what's happening in their own organizations. You know, I worked for a man one time who had some people that were working for him that because they performed, he was unaware of the unethical practices that they employed, both with their colleagues and for the people that worked for him. And it eventually caught up with them, and they were outed. But not being aware of what's going on in the organization is a key characteristic of a lousy leader. And so it's important for us to know what's going on in our organizations. Yeah, code, success, wow, politics, signing off, sad. Don't do that yet if you can keep from it. You know, I'm not trying to be offensive with politics. I'm just trying to illustrate from politics because it's so in our face right now. It's just a ready thing that we all have access to, and I think the illustrations are plentiful. So that's why I'm talking about politics today. But that's okay. If you don't like it, fine. Okay, number 10. This is huge. This is a huge characteristic of lousy leaders, and that is that they don't hold people accountable, especially themselves. You know, before we go pointing the finger at all the people in politics that are not holding themselves accountable, let's look at ourselves. Are we being held accountable? Are we holding ourselves accountable to our word, to our actions, to what we've promised, to what we said we would deliver? Are we holding ourselves accountable? And we need more accountability in Washington or whatever country you live in, whatever the capital is. There needs to be accountability, but it starts with us. And that's where I want to leave the content portion of this. We'll go into questions here in a second. But, you know, the important thing about leadership is that we exercise self-leadership. That's where it begins. And it's easy to blame other people. It's easy to point the finger, to play the victim. But it really starts with us. You know, if you want an organization that has better leadership, I want to challenge you to do something. Become a better leader. You have more influence and can have more impact than you probably think, but you have to take responsibility for your own actions and be the leader you wished you had. Okay, guys, if you have a question or a comment, I would love for you to give your name in the comments in all caps with question marks, and you can have a comment or whatever else, but I'll read your name, and then I'll read the question, and I'd love to do that. Okay, great material. Thanks for the scope. Thank you. I was born with already being a leader. Not sure what that means. You were born a leader? I think we all have the potential, certainly. Vern says accountability is huge and humbling. It is. And it means we have to own our mistakes and we have to apologize. I have to do this almost weekly, honestly. Jeremy, how do you define accountability? I think it's willingness to own our actions, to stop blaming other people, to say I was wrong, to be held accountable, to not make excuses. Emily, I wanted to say thank you. I always enjoy your scopes. Thank you, Emily. Great scope. Thanks, Mitchie. I missed the first 8, but I agree. Be the leader you want to follow. How do you feel about term limits, James says? I am for them. I think one of the things that's hurt our country in the U.S. is career politicians who spend so much time trying to get elected, and it seems like that's the only objective of their term is to get reelected, that they're not serving the people. Inez says, thank you for all you're doing, inspiring. Thank you. Yoga Pants CEO, awesome. I'm curious, you are a yogi? I guess you're talking to somebody else. How would you go about accountability as a leader? Well, I would start by holding myself accountable. If I said I was going to do something and I fell short, I would say so. If I said I was going to do something and didn't deliver, I would acknowledge that. And then I would expect other people in my organization to do the same. Rick, accountability is enhanced by entering into a mentoring relationship, is it? Yes, I think so, because it's putting yourself in a position of accountability. Absolutely. Mighty Jungle 7, thank you for sharing the URL for today's blog post. Carol, what if your leader doesn't want to hear where they need to approve? This is tough, isn't it? Sometimes that's the case. Maybe they just don't want to grow. But I think what you have to do is you have to be able to share with them why they need to change, but in terms that they can understand. So it's got to be relevant to them. What's in it for them? You know, everybody on the planet is tuned to that radio station, whether they know it or not. WIFI, what is it? What's in it for them? Yeah, so people are tuned to that. So you've got to be able and willing to help your boss see, or the leader that's in your organization see, that it's not in their best interest to keep doing what they're doing. Emily, do you have advice on gaining confidence as a leader? Yes, I want to share with you something that I learned from Dan Sullivan. And he calls these the 4 C's. So here's how it begins. Here's how you build confidence. Number 1, you commit to an outcome. Okay? And it's got to be something that's outside of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be a long way outside of your comfort zone, but it has to be outside of your comfort zone. So commit. Number 2, courage. You got to be willing to do the thing you committed to, even though you may feel uncomfortable, even though you may feel fear, uncertainty, or doubt. But courage. It's not being fearful, or not necessarily being the absence of fear, but it's the willingness to act in spite of your fear. Okay? So commit, courage. When you have that, you develop a new capability. You learn something, you become more of something. Like when I began Periscope, I was scared. And I had to commit to it, and I had to do what I was scared to do. And as a result of that, I think I'm in the process of developing a new capability. Simply One Grace, hello to you too. And then so it's commit, courage, capability, and then confidence. Then you get the confidence. And now you're able to make an even bigger commitment. It's like a circle that goes round and round and round. Okay, we have to be extraordinary. I can't read that, sorry. Not ordinary successes on the other side of fearlessness. Clay, accountability can help to fix the other 9 topics you brought up. Absolutely. Capability, you become capable by committing and having courage, which gives you confidence. Bill says, I'm voting for Ben Carson. Awesome. I think he's a man of tremendous integrity. In fact, on my website tomorrow at michaelhyatt.com, I've got a video interview that I did with Dr. Ben Carson about 4 years ago on an incredible topic. You're going to love this interview. But he shares some remarkable stuff from his personal life and some stuff that I found incredibly inspiring. I almost cried when I was interviewing. Somebody said, James says he's way too soft to be a president. Maybe. I know that's a criticism that he gets. My only criticism of him is he really hasn't run anything of any consequence. He's been a surgeon, and I think he ran that department, but I really want somebody that's got a lot of executive experience. Any other questions? Let's look at the time here. Oh, we're a little bit over time. Anything else? Ha! Neil says I'd vote for Hyatt. Well, I hope I have the good sense never to run. Mary, how do you teach kids to be leaders? Well, let's go back to the accountability theme. That's where I would start. Teach them to take responsibility. Teach them to stop being the victim, to stop blaming. Whenever you find yourself in a pickle, that's an American expression, whenever you find yourself in a situation that's uncomfortable, a failure of some sort, you have to ask yourself the question, what was it about your leadership that led to that outcome? It's really easy to point fingers. Blame the economy, something macro, or to blame other individuals. But a true leader, takes responsibility and says, what was it about my leadership that led to this result? Clay says, politics is the only game where anyone who wants to win shouldn't be allowed to play. Boy, isn't that the truth? I thought that several times myself. Do you believe Donald Trump has such confidence because he's a billionaire? I don't think so. I think Donald Trump, even if he was broke, would have that kind of, I wouldn't say confidence, but I think that kind of arrogance. Yes, this is being recorded and can be watched later. In fact, you can find this at vMentor, not right now, but later on today, vmentor.tv/scopes. I archive every single one of these Periscope sessions. Yeah, Mary says, I don't think he's confident at all. Can you repeat the 10 points? Yes. Actually, I'm going to do better than that. If you go to my blog post that I wrote on this, you'll see all of them with my narrative on each one. And you can find that at vmentor.tv/lousy. Yeah, thanks. Somebody just put it up. Well, guys, I got to get to my day. I'm sure you do too. And I just want to remind you that regardless of how much of the day you have left, whether it's an hour, 6 hours, or 12 hours, it's a blank canvas. You can paint on it anything you want, and I would just challenge you. Be a great leader. Even if you don't have a position of leadership, you've got influence. So use it for good. Make this a fantastic day. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.